the surrounding information that you have around that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you for having me here this morning to brief you on the current consultation that I've put out. If I can start by declaring an interest as a season ticket holder at Ulster Rugby and somebody who enjoys a pint. I believe you've all got a copy of my consultation. I personally placed it in your pigeonholes last week so that you would all be fully aware. The background to my proposal really lies with the investment that the Northern Ireland Executive has made in our national and regional stadia, namely the Kingspan Stadium, Casement Park and the National Football Stadium at Windsor. The committee meeting today, I feel, is quite well timed, given the success of the Northern Irish football team over the past weekend. And I believe, just as we saw the potential on the pitch be realised, that we should be making the full potential that lies off the pitch in the actual stadia themselves. And I believe the proposals in my consultation can help to achieve that. A significant sum of money has been invested in upgrading the stadium, and they have been or are being developed in such a way that they are versatile in their use and will be fully equipped to host sporting, education, business, tourism and leisure events. My consultation therefore really questions the point in delivering on the state-of-the-art building and premises and hoping to compete for good big international contracts, competing with other areas in the United Kingdom and Ireland, but then potentially hindering that process by limiting the operating conditions that we put on our stadia. From my consultation document, you'll see I've adapted a slightly different approach in that I haven't just simply asked a series of questions. I've really tried to take the reader through the whole current setup and explain the change that was made to the Licensing Northern Ireland Order 1996 back in 2004 when we allowed our indoor arenas to be listed as premises that could also be granted a liquor licence. And I've tried to describe a number of options and consider the costs and benefits of each of those, and at the end of the paper then I make a recommendation which would essentially be to mirror that legislation of 2004. I believe the same rationale should be used for our new state-of-the-art stadia, which weren't envisaged whenever the 1996 order was brought in. So just before I take you through the proposal in a wee bit more detail, I want to be very clear. I am not intending in any way to try and reform our full liquor licensing. I'm not looking at opening hours, regulating off sales, Easter opening or anything like that. It's a very, very specific change that I'm consulting on and proposing to make, and believe that we are capable of still being able to take that through in this current Assembly mandate. So briefly then, if we look at the existing liquor licensing law, it states in the 1996 order very clearly the types of premises for which a court may grant a licence, and those are public houses, off licences, hotels, guest houses and restaurants, conference centres, higher education institutions, places of public entertainment, refreshment rooms in public transport premises, seamen's canteens, and then in 2004 the indoor arenas were added. And my proposal is simply to then also add on to that an outdoor stadium. And then within the bill, as the bill gets drafted, I would, as I say, be adding an outdoor stadium category. It would be suitably defined, and my thoughts around this at the moment are that it would be defined as having a minimum of 8,000 permanent seats, which would currently take in your Kingspan, your Windsor Park and Casement. But also could be an outdoor stadium that has been designated by the department as being of regional or national importance. So it would essentially future-proof things and allow, for instance, if an athletic stadium was built in 10 years' time that maybe only had 6,000 seats but was seen to be of regional or national importance, the department would have it in their power by regulations to allow to designate that, and therefore it would fall under this. The existing safeguards that are in the current licensing order of 1996 would still apply to our outdoor stadia. So that would include about the fact that the sale of alcohol would need to be ancillary to the normal business carried out on the premises, meaning that an outdoor stadium can't just open up and sell alcohol. It needs to be when the outdoor stadia is in use for an event, sporting or otherwise. It would be subject to the normal hours of business being carried on the general permitted hours. Again, I'm not proposing to change that. any alcohol sold would have to be on the premises, so there's no off-sales aspect to it. And as with indoor arenas, the outdoor stadia would be subject to the same provisions in the licensing order that are intended to protect children and young people under the age of 18. And an additional safeguard that I would be proposing to put in would be that a court would be given the power to put any conditions it considers appropriate on the licence whenever the actual venue goes to apply for the licence. And that would, for example, allow the court to respond to any concerns about the sale of alcohol, perhaps at an event, particularly for those at a young audience. So say you had your Schools Cup final or something like that, they could make it very clear in the licence that, you know, alcohol cannot be sold at those events. But it would be a licensing matter, but I've made very specific reference to putting that in, that a court can put conditions on it. Other than that, really, you know, I've gone out to consult on the proposals. I have been in touch with the department about my proposals, just to sort of to try to take their view on it, and I'm waiting a response back at this point. I know that the committee already has a very good grasp of the licensing laws, having gone through the review a couple of years ago. So probably at this point, I'm happy just to stop and take questions.
Okay, Judith, thanks very much. Just first of all, technically, just could you introduce your colleague, because we haven't got the...
Sorry, apologies. This is Matthew McKibben, who works with me.
So Kevin knows who he is. Thank you very much. Okay, members, you've had quite a comprehensive run through that, albeit by way of speed. So,
thanks, Chair, and commend Judith for her initiative. Can I just ask, you mentioned some outdoor stadium and the likes of Drumbo Park, and we know there has been considerable lobbying in relation to that particular facility. Will your proposals take account of such facilities which are already in existence and enable them to further develop their business potential?
Well, I mean, I am fully supportive of the argument that Drumbo have. It is a slightly different situation, though, in that this is around, they have an entertainment licence, and the problem for them is around the hours that can be used from an entertainment licence, and there is a very simple fix within the overall order that could be made to achieve that. I don't think I can do that within the scope of my bill. If I want to be realistic, I want to make sure that this actually does progress before the end of the mandate. I think if I was to try and open it up and allow you know, lots of other issues to be taken, apart from licensing outdoor stadia, which is what I'm proposing to do, and it's stadia of regional or national importance, I think that could become difficult, but that would be up to the Bill Office to decide whether or not an amendment of that nature would fall within the scope of my bill. I certainly would, you know, if it was coming forward, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it, but I'm just being realistic about where I see this bill going.
Chair, if I could just come back, I mean, in terms of where the roadblocks are, in terms of the bill, so is it really based on technical advice at this stage, or is it, do you believe, maybe because of political opposition, that you might not want to extend further the focus of the bill? Well,
I have made my consultation very specific, and I've done that for a reason. I know there have been lots of other areas consulted on. I don't believe that the issue for Drumbo has been consulted on, and therefore, you know, I think it's very difficult to try to take something forward that perhaps hasn't been. I'm not saying that somebody couldn't go ahead and try and do that, and nor have I at this point, and my consultation is still open at the moment, but at this point it isn't something that has been raised with me in the consultation either, so
that's fair enough.
Why I haven't really considered it.
Okay, Phil.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for the proposal and the presentation, Jude. I think it makes sense. Do you think that the consultation period you're running is long enough? I know you say it's short because of the previous order looked at issues like this, but do you think the consultation period you're proposing is long enough? Well,
as a private member, I don't have to consult at all, but I feel it's very important. I feel this issue is you know, something that people will have opinion on. At this precise moment, I have a 3-week consultation period. I already have 144 responses in on it. What I have done is I went to the department and I asked them for the list of people who had responded to the previous consultation. So I have targeted all of those people to make sure I've taken that in. I've also myself sat down, and I believe, have you been provided with the consultee list? I'm not sure if you have or not, but I've shown where I have taken a number of other health organisations and religious groups and church organisations and have put that out there. I will continue to try and push and make sure that I have enough responses back, because I have been opening the responses as they come in and dealing with them as they come in. Should I feel I want to extend the consultation period perhaps for another week, I still think I would be able to do that and still have a draft bill with the Speaker when I had wanted to. But I certainly think because it's mirroring another piece of legislation as well, I think 3 weeks is okay.
Dead on. Can you tell me how you're going to consult specifically with the residents around each of the 3 stadia you've listed, because ultimately they're the people that's going to be affected most by this, more than religious groups or anybody else?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, what my legislation is proposing is essentially enabling legislation to be able to put in place that a stadium can apply for a licence. Whenever the licence is actually applied for, that is the point where the residents groups, etc., would be able to respond. It's a public consultation. They are already able to respond. I have done some letter drops in some of the areas where, for instance, in the vicinity of Kingspan, which is already operating and is already operating with a licence, to take their views. So it'll be interesting to see what those come back.
I appreciate this is a culture more associated with rugby maybe than the other 2 sporting codes, but have you spoken with the IFA or the GA to see whether it's an option that they are particularly interested in?
Yes, I have both bodies, as well as Ulster Rugby, had input into it. I did pre-consultation with them and they had input into it, and they all 3 are very supportive of it. Now, obviously, when it comes to the football stadium, they may choose to use a licence like that in a different way because they're governed by other rules under UEFA, etc. But in order for the actual stadium themselves to be able to realise their full potential, they think that this would be particularly beneficial.
And how key is this proposed legislative change to making a Rugby World Cup bid to host the 2023 Rugby World Cup vital, making it a success if it is a successful bid? Well,
the current situation that you have is that the stadium can apply for an occasional licence. So I suppose it would...
Ravenhill?
At Ravenhill, yes. But it's not Kingspan, I think it's called now. They can't...
be bought over by corporate branding.
It's not Kingspan itself that actually can draw down the occasional licence, because you actually must be a full licence holder to be able to draw down an occasional licence. So the current situation is that it is actually the people who have got the catering contract who draw down that occasional licence. And actually that's another aspect in that, in a way, probably you could say that we are discriminating against small businesses because the stadium at the moment, if they want to apply for an occasional licence, would need to have that kind of link to a large organisation. But overall, the whole plans around bidding for the 2023 World Cup, Casement Park is vital to that, and it would be expected that the same sort of rules and terms and conditions that can apply at other rugby matches would be there for that.
Mm-hmm. And finally, in terms of outdoor arenas as opposed to stadia, is that something you've given any consideration to?
Not really, just they chose to use the term indoor arenas before. I think in 2004, if they had envisaged we would have had 3 major stadia, they may have called it indoor and outdoor arenas, and I wouldn't need to be sitting here in front of you right now. But
will your change solely apply to stadia, or if somebody develops an extensive outdoor arena in future, will it be excluded from applying for this?
It would need to be designated as being an arena of a stadium of regional or national importance.
But does the whole thing about a stadium, does that imply sport?
No, a stadium can be, well, can be used for anything, any purpose. I mean, this isn't specifically only to allow it whenever, it's that. If it is a stadium, an outdoor stadium of regional or national importance, then it will fall within the remit of the bill.
Thanks, Judith.
Okay, Paula.
Thank you. Phil has answered some of what I was going to ask. I've been to Ulster Rugby before, albeit it's been a couple of years since I have been there, and I understand the alcohol side of it, and and it's actually quite well behaved, as we would know as well, attending those matches. And I actually welcome this, what you've brought forward, Judith, because I do understand the problems that Ulster Rugby have had in getting their licences and worrying about the time scale. I think you had mentioned that in your submission. Has there been any occasions where they've been turned down for
No, at this point they haven't.
Right.
But there have been some days where it's been 11 o'clock on match day.
Yeah.
And the time and resource and effort that has been put into that all the time, when we could be focusing, on other things, I think they run a very tight ship, and I don't think that anything would change from that. Match night would still be very much the same as it is.
Also, I know with attending concerts and stuff in the SSE Arena and how that works and the sale of alcohol there, and following on from Phil's point, I mean, our outside, the likes of Kingspan or Windsor Park or Casement could be used at any time for any other event as well. You've got concerts. I know when I've been on holiday in America, I went to a large political event as well that was held inside a stadium. There are lots of other options that are available for stadiums to be used in Northern Ireland, and I think this benefits that also. The issue to do with the 9 p.m. and the children, we know we've had issues with that before when we've been discussing this in committee previously. How is that going to affect, where children have to be off the premises?
Okay, so this is the 9 p.m. whenever the bar is still open. What they did whenever they brought forward the 2004 order is that there is an exemption in there, and I'm proposing that we mirror that as well, so that the standard safeguards around not being able to sell alcohol to children, etc., but it doesn't then, they're not tied in on that, so it would be exactly the same as what is there currently for the SSE Arena.
Well, and that is what we would definitely require for this, because as we know, matches go on longer than 9 p.m, so you wouldn't want to see that type of issue preclude people from attending as well. No, I look forward to its travel through time and see how it goes. Well done.
Gregory?
Yeah, I'm just trying to clear my head what the distinction would be if we set aside future potential people who would benefit, like say Casement or others, but existing grounds like, for example, rugby and football. What's the difference between the application for an occasional licence and what the provision would be if your bill went ahead, apart from repeatedly having to apply?
Well, the occasional licence is applied for, as I said, by somebody who holds a full licence. So only somebody who already holds a full licence draws it down. So at the moment, it is actually the catering company that draws that down. But the actual operational of it, you will see very little difference at the stadium between what you're allowed to do with an occasional licence and what you're not allowed to do. The extra aspect that comes in is around that exemption for the tying into all of the children's stuff that the indoor arena has done, which you couldn't currently do with an occasional licence.
But for example, Kingspan Rugby have some experience, but because of the expanded ground, it's comparatively recent. At Windsor, there would be a slightly longer degree of corporate hospitality, etc., at games there. What I'm trying to get into my head, what the distinction would be on the ground for either those who are holding the events or patrons who are attending, between what happens now and what would happen if the bill went ahead.
Well, if the bill goes ahead, all the bill simply does is allow for a stadium to apply for a full licence.
Which somebody else can currently do.
Which somebody else can currently do on an occasional basis. It would allow them to apply for a full licence, which would mean it would be theirs, which means that they're not tied to having to tender to catering contracts only from large companies who have a full licence already. It would also allow this exemption around the children not having to be off the premises by 9 o'clock. Which is the current situation, which is in place if you have a children's certificate in place. In somewhere like Windsor Park, in the National Football Stadium, they would still be governed by the UEFA rules, so they probably will not be able to sell alcohol at their matches or before or after. So the stadium applying for a licence is more to do with if they had another event that they wanted to do. They may not feel that they will benefit from it as much as perhaps the business model that is being used at Ulster Rugby, in the same way that the business model that's used at the Giants at the indoor arena. However, they do still feel strongly that it is important and that it will allow them to be able to attract other events and look at other events. And remember that I have made it very clear that conditions can be put on those licences. So I've made that very, very clear. It's not just simply this is a really open licence. The conditions can be put on that licence. So whenever they're applying for a licence and they're stating the types of events that they think they might be having, the residents will be consulted, etc. And the court has the opportunity to put specific
But most of those things would apply to an applicant for an occasional licence?
Most of them would, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Slamy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clear notice I'm an honorary member of Harnwood Wellers Club, so I'm going to bring that in. Thanks.
Hard to get that in the record,
Where's the International Stadia?
Thanks very much for your presentation so far. You've done a lot of work. Could you just tell us, I'm a bit honest about this, but from a Harnwood Wellers point of view, it's they see themselves as a regional organisation. What differential regional organisations, say, from Ulster Rugby or even, say, Glentoran or Linfield, whatever?
We're really talking about the size of the stadium, and I've talked about the definition that I'm proposing at this stage, and it will depend on what comes back fully in the consultation, but the definition that I'm looking at the moment around outdoor stadia is really, it's essentially to be for Kingspan, for Windsor Park and for Casement. That is the purpose behind the bill. Those are the stadia that our executive have invested in and that have the potential to attract major sporting events in Northern Ireland, and that's really, I appreciate there's other smaller clubs, etc., who think that they're regional national importance, but it is very clear. And the reason why I don't just want to simply put in the bill, I'm going to name those three stadia, is that I want to try and future-proof it, in case, because we don't know 20 years down the line what else may be built in Northern Ireland.
Because I was thinking of Harnwood Wellers, who have a social club at the moment, have a full licence, and they're hoping that they're in the plans, as you know yourself, developing multifunctional stadium as such. So I'm sure that they will be looking for, do you say, the future-proof along the line. Judith, could I just ask you, what's been the general response so far? And you talked about you don't have any response yet from the department. Have you any informal discussions that can give you an update about where things are going?
Yeah, I mean, the department have been very helpful. I have spoken to, I suppose today he's the former Minister for Social Development, about it when he has been in post, and the department certainly have been very helpful in answering any questions that I may have, and also in providing that help around making sure that I'm targeting the right people, because I do understand the timescales around this. I have had a number of consultation responses back so far, and understandably there are quite a few from people from Ulster Rugby, because they are I guess the stadium that is up and running at this precise moment, and that probably have the most direct influence of it. And there are a few comments. I've been going to Ravenhill Kingspan now, since the 1960s, when about 200 people watched the Ulster matches. During the 1980s, I took my own children to watch Ulster, but they enjoyed the games, but the facilities were so poor, we spent as little time as possible on the ground, and through recent years, I've watched the stadium develop into a great family night out. I believe young people seeing adults being able to enjoy a beer whilst watching the match shows them how to enjoy it without negative behaviour. So those are the type of responses that have come back. I have a couple of others who, again, are actual season ticket holders, but who have said no, we would like to maintain the status quo. We think it is okay, and it reminds Ulster Rugby all the time of their obligations, but obviously doesn't deal with you're obviously looking for someone who has a full licence to enable you to do that. But, you know, very positive response at this point.
Five of the residents still in the Craig estate have relatives that live there. Are you saying your bill won't change anything? I mean, if there's a match, you know, next Saturday night, and this legislation went through, it wouldn't change anything for them, would that be?
It doesn't change anything. To the outside, they will see the same operations as what is currently happening.
Yeah.
It just makes a big difference
Yeah.
to the inside.
Okay. And just finally, Chair, in relation to the churches, any response from churches so far?
Not yet, but
Yeah.
we
What do you
have
expect?
targeted them all, and I will be chasing them.
Okay. Thank you, Judith. Wish you well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Roy.
Thanks for your presentation. You're on a very challenging time frame here. I have my own private members bill due for listing next week, or stage 1. But you've said you have a very short period for the consultation. What makes you think that it's going to be adequate? Can you just go over that again?
Well, as I say, first of all, this isn't a completely brand new piece of legislation. It's mirroring something that is already in place for an indoor arena, and it's the same business model that is operating elsewhere. So there's already a precedent that has been set for this. Secondly, just because you have a longer consultation period doesn't mean that you get any more responses back. I have been very, very specific at really trying to go to people and make sure that I'm getting on board their views, and whether that be, you know, I'm not just going to people who I think will say, yes, we like this, and I'm specifically targeting the people who might not, because I genuinely want to hear their views to see if there's anything that I should be able to do.
Have you been given access to the previous consultation that the department carried out?
Yes.
All the responses and not just the names, but
No,
the detail.
I got the list of all of the bodies who had responded before, with even with their email addresses, so I was able to target them directly, individually. The department have been very helpful in that regard.
Okay, and how long ago was that?
That's a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was launched. Sorry.
I'm relatively new on the committee, only joined this year, so when did the first consultation, the departmental
The
consultation?
departmental consultation on the liquor licensing reviews was 2011-12, so it's a couple of years ago.
Right, 4 years ago, okay. And it just seems to be parked at present then?
I understand that a bill has been drafted on a number of measures, but at this point is not forthcoming, and that's why I'm not just going to propose that, well, what I have here, I would try to put in an amendment to that, because I think this specific piece is competent and could be taken forward in the timescale.
And when do you hope to have legislation introduced to the Assembly? Because I'm very conscious, all committees know that we're approaching a deadline whereby there will be a limited period left for new legislation to be introduced.
My draft bill will be with the Speaker on the 2nd of November.
Okay, thank you.
I just further that, Judith. Thank you, Roy. What then do you need this committee to do if the committee is amended to? Well, if it's referred, it'll be referred here anyway, but what would you need then the committee to do if the committee is amended to support or whatever? So what do you need the committee in effect to do?
Well, essentially the committee stage normally runs for around 30 days. And I know that coming down the line there could be an avalanche of other legislation coming back from the executive. The way I've set my consultation document out states clearly exactly what I'm doing or proposing to do in the bill, and at this point, from the responses I've had so far, I don't see there really being any changes needing to be made to what the proposal is. So essentially, even from my consultation document at this point, I feel that the committee could be going ahead and taking information from people. I mean, I could provide a draft bill to you at this point, but I don't really want to do that until I have my consultation closed. But really, any of the sort of standard timelines that we normally work within, any of those that can be narrowed at any point would be beneficial. And I mean, if there's any questions that anybody has afterwards or any points they have to make, I am here open to people coming and talking to me about it. The more people that the more members who are fully aware of this, and I will continue to talk to other members who aren't on this committee, then hopefully the quicker it can be taken through if there's support for it.
And I don't have a time frame in my mind in terms of what is the minimum time frame that we require from when we get notice to deal with it. So in terms of scheduling, or do we have to make a call for evidence, or do we have to do any of that?
Chair, the committee doesn't have to do anything with the bill until it reaches committee stage. After committee stage, the statutory period for the committee is 30 working days.
Do we have to do a call for evidence?
Well, Judith has already done that, so we could avail of that. But Chair, I would just highlight, the committee's come to look at its own forward work programme, where it's got it's prioritising 2 of its own bills currently. And it may want to consider the evidence that can take, if it was so minded to do so, in the context of those 2 pieces of legislation.
We would have to do it anyway, and thanks for that, Kevin, but I'm just wondering about what are the minimum time frames you're saying, so we've got a minimum statutory?
There isn't so much a minimum, Chair, as in you've got 30 days in which to do it.
Yeah. Just trying to work out.
So, Chair, you could meet over a recess and go through my bill and...
Go for a Sunday morning meeting, folks. No problem. I'll be here. So, okay, Judith, you happy enough? You've made your case. I think you've well explained the purpose of the building and the operational aspects of it as well. And wish you good luck in pursuit of your particular piece of legislation. And good to hear any future soon developments. Is that fair enough? Okay,
Yes.
members content?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you as well.